The hotel was not silent. It was restrained. That was the difference. Sounds existed here. Footsteps, murmured conversations, the faint clink of glassware from the bar. But every sound behaved itself. Nothing rose too sharply. Nothing lingered longer than it was permitted to. Even laughter seemed aware of the room it occupied. I stood just inside the revolving doors with my suitcase upright beside me, my fingers still curled around the handle as if I had paused mid-movement. People passed. No one looked at me. And yet I felt seen, not observed, assessed. The lobby smelled faintly of citrus and polished wood, the scent of money trying very hard not to announce itself. The lighting softened edges, disguised fatigue, rewarded people who had learned how to wear control on their faces. I checked my reflection in the glass panel near the entrance, composed, neutral, unremarkable in the way that invited assumption. Women like me were easy to overlook because we didn't demand attention. We arrived prepared, organized, accommodating. We carried things, paid for things, smoothed things over. We were reliable. And reliability, I had learned, was often mistaken for permission. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. I didn't answer it. I had spent years responding immediately. Texts, calls, small emotional requests disguised as logistics. Availability had once felt like love. Now it felt like habit. The phone vibrated again. I took it out slowly. Evan. We're heading out. Don't wait up. That was all. No, sorry. No, are you tired? No, we'll meet you later. Just a statement. Final. Uninviting. I read it twice, then once more. Slower, I typed back. Out where? The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, returned. Then nothing. No reply. That silence was deliberate. I slid the phone back into my pocket and rolled my suitcase forward, the wheels whispering across marble that had never known urgency. At the front desk, the clerk looked up with a polite smile that did not reach his eyes. Good evening. Checking in? Yes, I said. The reservation should be under Caldwell. He nodded, fingers moving smoothly across the keyboard. Yes, Miss Caldwell. 3 nights, executive floor. A pause. So brief most people would have missed it. And you're listed as the primary account holder for the entire reservation. Primary. The word pressed gently but firmly against my ribs. That's correct, I said. He hesitated again. Your other guests have already checked in. Of course they had. Here are your key cards, he said, sliding them across the counter. If you need anything. I won't, I replied. Not sharply, not defensively, just accurately. As I turned toward the elevators, the revolving doors behind me spun again. Laughter spilled into the lobby, loose, unfiltered. I recognized every voice. Evan's laugh was relaxed, unburdened. Marcus added something crude enough to trigger another burst of amusement. Lauren's laughter rang sharp and bright, cutting cleanly through the space. I didn't turn around. I stepped into the elevator just as the doors closed, sealing the sound behind me. The elevator rose smoothly, silently, mirrors reflecting me back from every angle. I looked exactly like someone who belonged here. That irony sat heavily. On the 12th floor, the doors opened to a hallway wrapped in thick carpet and muted light. The corridor smelled faintly of fabric cleaner and something floral, designed to feel calming. My room was at the end. It always was. I walked slowly, not because I was tired, but because something inside me had begun to reorganize itself. Halfway down the hall, my phone buzzed again. Lauren, we assumed you'd gone to bed. Don't be mad. Assumed. The word lingered. Assumed I wouldn't mind. Assumed I wouldn't notice. Assumed I would make myself smaller to keep things smooth. I didn't reply. Inside the room, the city stretched out beneath the windows, lights glittering, distant, indifferent. I placed my suitcase beside the bed and stood there, still wearing my coat. This wasn't hurt. Hurt required surprise. This was recognition. I sat on the edge of the bed and removed my shoes. The room was immaculate, untouched, unclaimed. No signs of shared space, no evidence of warmth. I thought about the past year, about the way Evan had started slipping German phrases into conversation, casual, almost playful, as if the language were a private tool he had discovered. I had never corrected him, not once. My grandmother had taught me German quietly, patiently, in a small kitchen that smelled of bread and soap. She had spoken it like a second skin, not a performance. Listening, she used to say, is how you learn what people assume you don't deserve to know. I had listened. I had learned. The next morning, breakfast unfolded like a rehearsed scene. White linen, perfect symmetry, soft sunlight filtering through tall windows. They arrived together. Evan took the seat across from me, phone already in his hand. Lauren slid in beside him, her smile effortless. Marcus followed, loud in posture even when he wasn't speaking. Diane came last, her movements careful, eyes briefly meeting mine before dropping to her cup. 5 people, 1 table, and something unspoken tightening between us. "You sleep okay?" Evan asked, still scrolling. "Enough," I said. Lauren smiled brightly. "You disappeared last night." "I didn't," I replied. "I arrived." Marcus laughed. "Same thing." Evan finally looked up. "Plans changed." "They usually do," I said. "When they're made without you." A beat. Evan smiled thinly. "You're reading into it." "I'm reading it," I said. Diane stirred her coffee too long. No one laughed. That was the moment. Not explosive, not dramatic. Just the subtle understanding that alignment had shifted, and I was no longer standing where I thought I was. After breakfast, they scattered as if the table had never mattered. Lauren stood first, sliding her chair back with an ease that was practiced, like she expected space to make room for her. Marcus followed, glancing at his phone as though the screen contained something more urgent than the people in front of him. Evan lingered a moment, as if he meant to say something, then decided he didn't need to. Diane remained seated, stirring coffee she wasn't drinking. I could feel her watching me without looking directly at me, one of those habits people develop when they've been in rooms where eye contact creates consequences. "You're quiet," she said finally. "I'm not," I replied. "I'm controlled." That made her smile faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Evan doesn't handle controlled," she said. "I've noticed." Diane's spoon clinked softly against the cup. It was the only sound between us for a moment. "You should be careful," she added. "Careful." A word that carried a shadow. I angled my head. "Careful of what?" Diane hesitated, and in that hesitation I saw the outline of a truth she wasn't ready to name. "Just careful," she repeated, then stood abruptly, as if the conversation had begun to burn. She left without another word, and the room, once full of motion and performance, felt suddenly hollow. That was when it occurred to me that this weekend hadn't been designed for closeness, it had been designed for positioning. I rode the elevator down alone. The mirrors reflected me back in fragments. Face, shoulders, hands. People always noticed hands. Hands revealed more than faces did. You could smile with your mouth and still be telling the truth with your fingers. Mine were steady. The lobby was busier now. Late morning movement. Business travelers, couples, staff passing silently like they belonged to the building more than the guests did. At the front desk, the clerk from the night before glanced up and recognized me immediately. His smile appeared, professional and practiced. "Good morning, Ms. Caldwell." "Good morning." I didn't ask about the billing separation right away. I asked for something ordinary. "A spa appointment adjustment," I said. He typed, nodded, confirmed. Then I let a beat of silence settle. "Also," I added casually, "could you print my reservation summary? The full listing." His fingers paused again, not because he couldn't, because he knew what that request often meant. "Of course," he said. As he turned to the printer, I watched his posture, slightly more careful than before, as if he had stepped into something that required discretion. He slid the papers toward me. My name sat at the top, primary account holder. Under it, Evan's name, Lauren, Marcus, Diane. The list looked innocent enough, but the timestamp at the bottom caught my eye, an update logged at 12:47 a.m. That wasn't check-in, that was adjustment. A quiet, administrative movement while I'd been upstairs alone. I folded the paper carefully and placed it in my bag as if it were nothing. Then I walked toward the bar, took a seat and ordered water. Just water, because alcohol dulled edges and I needed mine sharp. The bartender slid the glass toward me without speaking. I didn't drink yet. I looked around the lobby again, and I realized something else. This hotel wasn't just expensive, it was designed for privacy. Private conversations, private deals, private exits. A place where someone could rewrite the narrative of a marriage without raising their voice. Around noon, my phone lit up. "Evan, where are you?" The message was harmless on its surface, but it wasn't a question born of concern. It was a question born of control. I waited 60 seconds. Then I replied, "Out." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "Evan, we're going to the shops. You coming?" A correction? A soft invitation that sounded like inclusion, but arrived only after he had noticed I wasn't where he expected me to be. I stared at the screen a moment longer than necessary, then typed, "Maybe later." His reply came quickly. "Evan, don't start. Not here. Not here." That phrase settled in my stomach with a strange precision. It wasn't "don't start this," it was "don't start this here," which meant there were rules. There were places I was allowed to react and places I wasn't. There were settings in which my emotions were permitted and settings in which they were considered an inconvenience. The hotel itself, then, wasn't neutral. It was a stage. And Evan cared very much about how the scene looked from the audience. They returned in the afternoon, smelling of perfume and spending. Lauren entered first, swinging shopping bags like trophies. Marcus followed, talking loudly about prices as if money was an entertaining topic rather than a quiet power. Evan came last, relaxed, almost bright, like he'd spent the day replenishing himself. Diane trailed behind them, quieter than the rest, her gaze slipping away when it met mine. Lauren saw me in the lounge and smiled too widely. "There you are," she said. "We thought you were hiding." "I wasn't," I replied. "I was reading." Marcus laughed. "Reading what?" "People," I said. A small pause. Evan's smile tightened, then returned carefully. Lauren's laugh rose again, louder than necessary. "You always make it sound creepy." "It's only creepy when someone has something to hide," I said lightly. Evan's eyes met mine. For a fraction of a second, the warmth fell away, and I saw something underneath. Calculation, irritation, the beginning of caution. Then he looked away as if nothing had happened. They moved past me toward the elevators, but not before Lauren leaned in and said in a voice meant to sound friendly, "Tonight you should come out. It'll be fun." Her tone implied something else. "Don't stay behind. Don't give yourself space to think." I smiled. "We'll see." That evening, I sat alone in my room with the lights low. The city outside glittered like an expensive lie. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared financial dashboard, something Evan had insisted we keep for transparency. I scrolled slowly, carefully, not looking for a single dramatic shift, but for patterns, small movements, unfamiliar transfers, scheduled changes. It wasn't hard to find what I needed. A new payee added last month, a set of documents uploaded but not signed, a note in Evan's calendar labeled Consult Berlin, and another labeled Consult Local. I didn't click them, not yet. I was mapping. You didn't enter a trap by walking into the center. You entered it by learning its edges. My phone buzzed. This time it was Diane. "Diane, are you alone?" I stared at the message. Then I replied, yes. 3 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. Not soft, not casual, urgent, controlled. I opened it, and Diane stepped inside like someone who didn't want to be seen doing it. She didn't sit. She paced once, then faced me. "You're not supposed to know," she said. I waited. Her mouth tightened. "Whatever you heard. Whatever you think you heard." "I haven't told you what I heard," I said. That stopped her. Her eyes widened slightly, like she'd revealed too much by arriving at all. Diane swallowed. "Evans, he's making plans." "Plans," I repeated, softly. She nodded, jaw clenched. "He thinks you'll accept it." Something in my chest shifted. Not pain, not even anger. An old, familiar disappointment. "Accept what?" Diane's gaze flicked to the door, then back to me. "He wants you quiet," she said. "He wants you agreeable." "And what do you want?" I asked. Diane's face tightened, and for a second she looked like someone much younger, like someone who had once learned survival by staying silent. "I want you safe," she whispered. "Safe from him?" I asked. She didn't answer. Silence answered for her. Diane's hands trembled slightly. She hid it by clasping them. "Just," she began, then stopped. The sentence died in her mouth. And I realized something. Diane wasn't protecting Evan. She was protecting herself from what she knew. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Her eyes shone, not with tears, but with strain. "Because if you don't move first," she said, "you won't get to move at all." The room felt suddenly smaller. I didn't speak for a moment, then I said carefully, "Did he tell you I don't understand German?" Diane froze. That was my confirmation. "Marion," she whispered. I smiled faintly. "He did." Diane exhaled, defeated. "Yes." I walked to the desk, lifted my phone and played nothing. I didn't need to. The truth was already in her face. "I do understand," I said softly. "Perfectly." Diane's eyes widened, then closed. For a moment she looked like she might collapse. Then she opened them again and said the only thing she could say without betraying herself completely. "Then you know," she whispered. "I know enough," I replied. Diane stepped backward as if the floor had shifted. "You have to be careful," she said again, and this time the word carried its real meaning. Not cautious, not polite. "Survive." She left quickly without looking back. When the door clicked shut, the silence returned, thick, patient, watchful. I stood still for a long moment. Then I walked back to the desk and opened my laptop again. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I began to prepare. Because now I understood the shape of the weekend. They hadn't brought me here to celebrate. They had brought me here because this place made it easier to do quiet damage. And quiet damage was always done by people who believed they would never be questioned. The hotel changed when the sun disappeared. What had felt polished and public during the day became intimate, almost conspiratorial after dark. Lights dimmed, corridors softened, conversations lowered instinctively, as though the walls had begun listening. From my room, I watched the city glow, windows blinking on and off like signals I couldn't yet read. Somewhere below, people were arriving for dinners they believed were harmless, meetings they believed were private. Belief, I was learning, was a dangerous thing. My phone buzzed. "Evan, we're heading out in 10. You coming or not?" There it was. The choice presented as courtesy. I stared at the message, noting the timing. 10 minutes. Enough to rush. Enough to keep me from thinking. I replied slowly. "I'm tired. I'll stay in." The response came almost immediately. "Evan, don't do this tonight. Not don't worry. Not we'll talk later. Don't do this." As if my absence were an act of defiance rather than a preference. I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down and sat back in the chair by the window, letting the quiet stretch. From somewhere down the hall, doors opened and closed. Laughter drifted, then faded. They were leaving without me again. But this time, I had chosen it. I waited, not passively, deliberately. At 9:42 p.m., my phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail notification. Unknown number. I didn't open it immediately. I watched the timestamp instead. 9:41 p.m., which meant it had been sent while they were already out. Drinks poured, guards lowered. The night relaxed around them. I pressed play. At first there was noise, music, glasses clinking, someone laughing too close to the phone, then Evan's voice. German, low, casual, unfiltered in a way it never was at home. He wasn't angry, he wasn't emotional, he was confident. He said my name the way someone referenced a logistical problem, not cruelly, efficiently. I understood every word. He spoke about timing, about how this weekend made things easier, about how I was predictable, how I preferred peace to conflict. Lauren laughed in the background. Marcus added something crude. Someone said something about signatures. Evan responded smoothly. Paperwork, accounts, tomorrow. I felt my breath slow as the words settled into place, assembling themselves into meaning I couldn't dismantle. He wasn't talking about leaving me, he was talking about moving me. Out of decisions, out of control, out of relevance. The message ended abruptly. Someone must have noticed the phone or the recording stopped. I didn't move. I sat perfectly still, phone warm in my hand, the room silent except for the distant hum of the city. This wasn't betrayal fueled by desire. This was strategy. That realization landed with a weight I hadn't anticipated, not crushing, but clarifying. I replayed the message, then again. Then I saved it, backed it up, renamed the file, and set the phone down carefully, as if sudden movement might disturb what had just been revealed. When they returned later that night, I heard them before I saw them. Footsteps, voices, the familiar rhythm of a group that believed itself united. I stayed seated. The knock came softly at first, then louder. Marion? Evan's voice. Controlled. Pleasant, threaded with something sharper underneath. I didn't answer. The door unlocked. He stepped in alone. The room light caught his face, and for a moment he looked almost startled, like he hadn't expected to see me sitting there, composed, waiting. You didn't come out, he said. I said I wouldn't. He closed the door behind him carefully, too carefully. You've been distant all day, he added. I've been observant. His jaw tightened. You're imagining things. I looked at him, truly looked. At the ease he carried, the confidence, the assumption that this conversation would unfold on his terms. Are you sure? I asked quietly. He laughed softly, dismissively. This again. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I simply said, Did you enjoy Berlin? The question hit him harder than I expected. His smile faltered, just slightly. What? He said. You mentioned it earlier, I continued calmly. The consultations, the lawyer. His eyes sharpened. You've been going through my things. No, I said. You've been leaving them where I can see them. He took a step closer. You're tired. That's all this is. Tired people don't hear clearly, I said. I did. Silence stretched. For the first time since I'd known him, Evan didn't rush to fill it. Who told you? He asked finally. No one, I replied. He studied me then, not as a spouse, not as a partner, but as an unknown variable. What do you think you heard? He asked. I met his gaze. Enough, I said. He exhaled slowly. Marion, you're making this bigger than it needs to be. Then it should be easy for you to explain, I said. Another pause. He didn't. That was his answer. After he left, I stood and locked the door. Not dramatically, habitually. I sat back down, opened my laptop, and began organizing what I had. Not revenge, preparation. Because now I understood the truth that changed everything. They hadn't underestimated my intelligence. They had underestimated my willingness to act. They believed silence meant submission. They believed calm meant compliance. They believed I was trapped because I had never shown them what happened when I stopped accommodating. Outside, the city continued as if nothing had shifted. Inside, something fundamental had. This weekend was no longer about exclusion. It was about exposure, and the safety I had assumed I possessed had been quietly, deliberately removed, which meant there was no reason left to protect anyone else's comfort. Morning did not arrive gently. It crept in through the curtains like something curious, testing the room before committing to it. The city beyond the glass was already awake, already moving, already certain of its direction. I lay still and listened, not to the traffic, to the space beside me. Evan slept on his back, one arm flung across the sheets, his breathing deep and untroubled. He slept like someone who believed the hard work had already been done. That was the first thing that changed in me. Not anger, not fear, a recalibration. I watched him for a long moment, long enough to memorize the ease of his expression, the absence of doubt. This was the face of a man who believed he was ahead of the narrative. I turned away quietly and got out of bed. I dressed with intention, not elegance, not comfort, control, dark trousers. A simple blouse, no jewelry beyond my watch, the kind of outfit that didn't ask to be noticed, but didn't invite dismissal either. In the mirror, I looked the same. That was important. If you changed too quickly, people noticed. If you stayed consistent, they assumed nothing had shifted. I checked my phone, no messages. That meant they were watching, not speaking. Breakfast was louder than it had been the day before. Lauren arrived first, already talking, already performing. Marcus followed, adding commentary that didn't need to exist. Evan joined them moments later, relaxed, smiling, playing his role perfectly. Diane arrived last. Her eyes met mine briefly, then dropped. She sat beside me. That alone was a message. "You're up early," Evan said. "I slept enough," I replied. Lauren laughed. "You always say that like it means something." "Because it does," I said. Marcus glanced between us. "Are we doing the spa thing or shopping?" Lauren answered immediately. "Shopping, then lunch, just us." Just us. The phrase landed deliberately. Evan didn't look at me when he said, "You're welcome to join." It wasn't an invitation, it was a formality. "I have work to do," I replied. Evan's jaw tightened. "On a weekend trip?" "Some people don't stop managing things just because they're away," I said calmly. Lauren smiled too brightly. "You're always so responsible." Responsible. Another word that came with expectations attached. After breakfast, I didn't follow them. I went to the business lounge instead. The space was nearly empty. Soft chairs, muted screens, privacy built into the architecture. I chose a seat with my back to the wall and my face toward the entrance. People revealed more when they didn't think they were being watched. I opened my laptop. Not to work, to organize. The voicemail sat saved in 3 places now: cloud, drive, email. I replayed it once more, not to feel it, but to note details I'd missed the first time. The way Evan lowered his voice before mentioning accounts. The way Lauren laughed after, not before. The timing. Everything mattered now. My phone buzzed. "Evan, where are you?" I waited, then replied, "Busy." 3 dots appeared instantly. "Evan, with what?" The question was sharper than it needed to be. I didn't answer. Instead, I closed the laptop and walked toward the elevators. Not away, toward them. I found Lauren alone in the lobby boutique, flipping through a rack of scarves she didn't need. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "There you are," she said. "We thought you'd disappeared." I was nearby, I replied. She laughed lightly. You always are. I picked up a scarf, examined it briefly, then put it back. You and Evan seem close lately, I said casually. Her smile faltered, not fully, but enough. We're friends, she said quickly. Is that a problem? No, I said. I just find closeness interesting. She laughed again, but it was thinner now. You read too much into things. Do I? I asked. She shifted her weight. You've always been intense. I met her eyes. And you've always been careful. Her breath caught. Just once. I leaned in slightly. You should be. She stared at me, trying to decide whether I was threatening her or warning her. I straightened. Enjoy shopping, I said, and walked away. That afternoon, Evan confronted me by the elevators, not loudly, not emotionally, privately. You need to stop this, he said. Stop what? I asked. Whatever game you think you're playing. I tilted my head. Games require players who know the rules. His eyes darkened. You're acting unstable. There it was, the word men used when control slipped. I'm acting informed, I replied. He leaned closer. You don't know what you think you know. I smiled faintly. Then you shouldn't be worried. He stared at me for a long moment, then said quietly, You're going to embarrass yourself. I held his gaze. You're already embarrassed, you just don't know it yet. That was the first time I saw fear flicker across his face, just briefly, just enough. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. I sat in the chair by the window, city lights blinking below, and made a list, not of accusations, of leverage, people, timelines, documents. Diane knocked once, softly. I let her in. You shouldn't provoke him, she whispered. I'm not, I replied. I'm letting him move. She looked at me with something close to dread. You don't understand how far he'll go. I met her eyes. I do. Her voice broke slightly. Then why aren't you scared? I considered that, then answered honestly. Because fear belongs to people who don't have proof. Diane swallowed hard, and I knew then that she had chosen her side, not out of loyalty, out of survival. By the 5th day, the hotel no longer felt like a place to stay. It felt like a system. Every corridor had a rhythm now. Every elevator ride carried the possibility of interruption. Even the staff, polite, neutral, efficient, had begun to register the tension. The way animals sensed a storm before it arrived. I noticed how often Evan checked his phone, not casually, urgently. He no longer assumed control, he monitored it. That was progress. We crossed paths in the hallway mid-morning. Evan was coming from the elevators. I was heading toward the lounge. We stopped at the same time, close enough that I could smell his cologne, familiar, irritatingly comforting. You didn't answer me last night, he said. I was busy, I replied. With what? He asked again. This time, his tone wasn't curious. It was defensive. Listening, I said. His jaw tightened. You're doing this on purpose. Doing what? Creating tension. I looked at him steadily. Tension exists whether you acknowledge it or not. He exhaled sharply. You want to talk? Let's talk. Now? I asked. Now. I nodded once. All right. We stepped into an empty conference room near the business lounge. Glass walls frosted just enough to suggest privacy without fully granting it. The kind of room designed to look transparent while hiding everything that mattered. Evan closed the door. I don't know what you think is happening, he began, but whatever you overheard. You're already assuming I overheard something, I said. He stopped, then corrected himself. Whatever you think you know. I know you changed account structures without telling me. That's administrative. I know you consulted lawyers in Berlin. That was exploratory. I know you think I don't understand German. That one landed. He went very still. The silence thickened, pressing in from all sides. "You're imagining things," he said finally. I smiled faintly. "You've already used that line." "You're tired," he continued. "You're emotional." "I'm calm," I replied, "which seems to bother you more." His eyes darkened. "You don't know how this works." "Then explain it," I said. He didn't. And that was the confirmation. Later that afternoon, Lauren cornered me by the pool. She was alone this time. No Evan, no audience. Just her sunglasses, her posture slightly stiff, her confidence misaligned. "You've been acting strange," she said. "People keep saying that," I replied. She crossed her arms. "You're making Evan uncomfortable." "Good," I said. She laughed nervously. "You're not being funny." "I'm not trying to be." Her voice dropped. "You should be careful." The word echoed. Careful again. "Why?" I asked. She hesitated. "Because you don't want things to get messy." I leaned closer. "Things are already messy. You're just standing on the cleaner side of it." Her breath hitched. "You don't know what you're talking about." I tilted my head. "Then why are you scared?" She opened her mouth, closed it, and in that moment she said something she hadn't planned to. "He never meant for you to hear it," she blurted. The air shifted. "What?" I asked softly. Her eyes widened. "I didn't mean—" "Hear what?" I pressed. She swallowed. "The conversations." Plural. I stepped back, letting the silence do its work. Lauren's face flushed. "You're twisting things." "No," I said calmly. "You just confirmed them." She looked around, panicked. "You're going to ruin everything." I smiled faintly. "I'm not ruining anything. I'm letting it finish." She walked away without another word, and now I knew. This wasn't Evan acting alone. This was coordinated. The truth arrived that night, quietly, not through confrontation, through documentation. I had gone down to the business lounge to print a single email when the printer jammed. The clerk came to help, new, younger, apologetic. As he cleared the paper, a second document slid out behind the first. It wasn't mine. I noticed the header immediately. A legal firm. Berlin. My name appeared 3 times on the first page, not as a client, as a subject. I didn't touch the paper at first. I simply read what I could from where I stood. Asset reassignment contingent upon spousal non-objection. Assumption of consent based on historical compliance. Historical compliance. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't a plan to leave. It was a plan to neutralize. I thanked the clerk, folded only my own document, and left the lounge without reacting. Back in my room, I sat very still. The midpoint wasn't anger. It was clarity. This wasn't personal betrayal. It was a calculated exit strategy built on my predictability. Evan hadn't underestimated my intelligence. He had underestimated my threshold. Diane came to my room later that night. She didn't knock. She used the spare key. That alone told me something had gone wrong. "You found something," she said. "Yes." Her shoulders slumped. "I tried to warn you." "You warned me to be careful," I replied. "You never warned me to be prepared." Her voice shook. "He's moving faster than he planned." "Because he knows I know," I said. Diane nodded. "He's panicking." That word mattered. "Why?" I asked. "Because the paperwork isn't finished," she said. "And if you contest it—" "I will," I said. Her eyes filled, not with tears but fear. "Then he'll lose everything." I held her gaze. "So will I. If I don't." The silence that followed was heavy, irreversible. Diane whispered, "You're not safe here anymore." I smiled gently. I was never safe. I was just convenient. That night, Evan didn't come to bed. I heard him pacing in the adjoining room, making calls in German, short, sharp, controlled. He didn't know I could hear him clearly through the thin wall. He didn't know I understood every word. Deadlines, mistakes, her silence. Her silence. That was what he feared. Not my anger. Not confrontation. Silence broke assumptions. Silence delayed him. Silence bought me time. I saved another voicemail, then another, and another. By the time the city fell quiet, I had enough to end him, or save myself. The choice hadn't been made yet. Evan's mistake wasn't that he moved too fast. It was that he believed speed created inevitability. Some people thought urgency was power. They pushed, rushed, forced decisions into existence, and then called the outcome fate. But urgency was not power. Urgency was a confession. It meant you were afraid time would run out. By morning, Evan was afraid. I could see it in the way he held his phone like a weapon, gripped too tightly, checked too often. I could see it in the way he smiled at breakfast without warmth, performing calm while his eyes tracked movement around the room, as though he expected betrayal from any direction. Lauren arrived late, sunglasses on, mouth tight. Marcus showed up in a strained mood that suggested he'd been called into something he didn't fully understand. Diane sat beside me again, hands clasped, knuckles faintly pale. No one said what they were thinking, but the air was thick with it. Evan cleared his throat. "So," he said, "after breakfast, I need everyone in my room for a quick discussion." Lauren's head snapped up. "Why?" Evan's smile sharpened. "Just logistics?" Marcus frowned. "Sounds serious." "It's not," Evan said quickly. Too quickly. "It's just easier if we're aligned." Aligned. The word landed like a threat disguised as teamwork. Diane's eyes dropped to her coffee. I kept my face neutral, as if this were normal. As if I wasn't watching the trap close from the inside. After breakfast, they filed into Evan's suite like people walking into a meeting they believed had already decided their place. Lauren stood by the window, arms folded. Marcus hovered near the minibar, shifting his weight. Diane sat on the edge of an armchair, posture tense, eyes flicking between faces. Evan remained standing. He wanted height. He wanted the room arranged in ways that suggested hierarchy without anyone naming it. He began casually. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the future." Lauren scoffed lightly. "Here we go." Evan ignored her. "This marriage has been strained," he continued, looking at me now. "We both feel it." I didn't respond. Silence made him uncomfortable. He pressed on. "I want to handle this like adults. Cleanly." Marcus shifted. "What are you talking about, man?" Evan smiled. "I'm talking about restructuring, making things easier." He reached for a folder on the desk. A folder. Physical paper. Rare these days, which meant it mattered. He opened it and slid documents forward. "Marion," he said, voice measured. "I need you to sign these." Diane's breath caught. Lauren's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Evan didn't look at her. He looked only at me. "This is a separation agreement," he said softly. "Temporary for now." Temporary. A word meant to soften the blade. "It protects us both," he added. "It avoids conflict." Marcus stepped closer, brow furrowed. "You brought divorce papers on a trip?" Evan's smile tightened. "Not divorce. Just..." A pause. Lauren's laugh was sharp. A pause with legal documents. Evan snapped, "Lauren!" The way he said her name, too familiar, too controlling, made Marcus glance between them, suspicion rising like a slow tide. Evan turned back to me. "I'm being reasonable," he said. I stared at the papers. The signature line waited like an open mouth. I didn't touch them. "What happens if I don't?" I asked. His eyes hardened. "Then we do this the hard way," Diane whispered. "Evan..." He cut her off with a look. And then he did something that revealed the truth more clearly than any voicemail. He switched to German. Not loudly, not angrily, but instinctively, as if the language belonged to him when he needed privacy. He spoke to Lauren in German, a quick sentence, a directive. Lauren nodded, jaw tight. Marcus stared. What the hell was that? Evan smiled again. Nothing. I could have said then, I understand. I didn't. Not yet. Because I wanted them to keep moving, to keep stepping deeper into the assumption that I was blind. Evan slid a pen toward me. The pen stopped near my fingers like a dare. "Sign," he said quietly. And I realized this was not a request. It was an attempt to finalize the trap. They didn't leave the room. That was the next detail. No one moved to give me space. Evan wanted witnesses. Witnesses were leverage. Lauren watched me like she was waiting for me to do the predictable thing. Agree, smooth it over, sign to restore comfort. Marcus looked confused, shifting into discomfort, unsure who he was supposed to support. Diane's eyes begged me silently not to make this worse. And Evan stood there, confident again, because he believed the room itself had cornered me. I picked up the pen. Evan's shoulders loosened slightly. Then I set it down again. "I need time," I said. Evan's smile faded. "Time for what?" "To read," I replied. He laughed, bitter. "You don't need to read, it's standard." "Standard for whom?" I asked. His tone sharpened. "Marian, don't do this." "Don't do what?" "Don't turn this into a scene." Scene. Again. He feared appearance more than consequence. I leaned back slightly, voice calm. "This isn't a scene," I said. "It's paperwork. You brought it." Marcus muttered, "This is insane." Evan shot him a look. "Stay out of it." Marcus stiffened. "You involved us by bringing us in here," Lauren snapped. "Can we not argue? Just get it done." Get it done. She wanted closure, because closure meant she could return to pretending this was a love story instead of a strategy. Evan looked at me again. "I'm trying to protect you," he said. That was almost funny. I didn't laugh. I asked softly, "From what? Your own plan?" Evan's face tightened. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You don't understand what you're risking," he said. I met his gaze. "I understand exactly what you're risking." His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" I smiled faintly. "It means I'm not signing anything today." Silence hit the room like a closed door. Evan's composure cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but visible. Lauren's eyes flashed with panic. Diane looked as if she might be sick. And Marcus? Marcus finally saw it. He finally understood that he wasn't in a marriage dispute. He was in a controlled operation. Evan exhaled sharply and said something in German again. Harder this time. Lauren moved. She stepped toward the desk, reaching for the documents as if she meant to rearrange them, to take them away, to control the flow. I saw the movement, and I understood why. Because if the papers disappeared, it became his word against mine. If the papers stayed, the trap was visible. I moved first. I reached across the desk, grabbed the folder, and pulled it toward me. Lauren froze. Evan's eyes widened in anger. "You can't take that," he said. "I can," I replied. "My name is on it." He stepped forward. Not violent, but threatening. "I'm serious," he said. "I know," I said quietly. "That's why I'm keeping it." The room turned cold. Marcus spoke, voice low. "Evan, what the hell is going on?" Evan didn't look at him. He looked at me only. "Give it back," he said. I didn't. And that was the moment Evan made his second mistake. He raised his voice, not shouting. But enough. Enough that it stopped feeling like private marital tension and started sounding like control being lost. "Marian," he said sharply, "you're going to regret this." The threat landed in the air and stayed. Diane flinched. Lauren swallowed. Marcus stared. And something inside me, something old and exhausted, tightened. I realized then what Evan had been counting on. He had been counting on my desire for peace, my fear of escalation, my instinct to keep things calm. He had used that instinct like a leash. When the meeting ended, it didn't end cleanly. Evan dismissed everyone with forced calm, Lauren first, Marcus second, Diane last. He waited until the door closed behind Diane. Then he turned to me. His voice dropped to something intimate and cruel. "You think you're smart," he said, "but you're not built for this." My pulse remained steady. "Built for what?" I asked. "For conflict," he said. "For what comes next." I held his gaze. "I'm not the one who brought legal documents to a hotel." He stepped closer, lowering his voice further. "You don't understand," he said in German. "You will lose if you fight." I stared at him. "In German," I replied calmly. "You already lost when you assumed I couldn't hear you." His face changed, not confusion, not surprise, fear, real fear, like a door suddenly opening to a room he didn't know existed. "What?" he began. I switched back to English. "I understand." His mouth opened, closed. Then his expression hardened again, but it was forced now. He reached for his phone. "I can fix this," he said. "I can still fix it." He walked out of the room abruptly, leaving me standing alone with the folder still in my hands. I returned to my own room and locked the door. Then I sat on the bed, folder open, documents spread like evidence. And that's when the weight hit. Not the betrayal. The reality of consequence. Because now that he knew I understood German, he would accelerate. He would move faster, get ahead, rewrite the story with new urgency. And I felt it then. Real fear, finally arriving. Not fear of him shouting. Fear of systems, banks, lawyers, people who could make a person disappear on paper. I stared at the signature line again. A single stroke of ink could have ended me quietly. My throat tightened. For the first time, I wanted to call someone, anyone, who could tell me what to do. But there was no one. That was the crisis. Absolute isolation, absolute clarity, absolute risk. I was at the lowest point, not because I had lost, but because I finally understood what losing would look like. It wouldn't be dramatic. It would be administrative. That night, as the city darkened and the hotel softened into quiet again, my phone buzzed. A bank notification. Routine tone. Pending authorization request. My name. My signature. Requested now. My stomach went cold. He was doing it. He was trying to execute without me. I sat very still. Then I opened my laptop and made the call. The first call of the reversal, not to Evan, not to Diane, not to anyone who would soothe, to someone who would document, to someone who would freeze timelines, to someone who would make administrative disappearance impossible. When I finished, my hands were steady again. I stared at the window, city lights blinking, and I understood. Act 2 wasn't about discovering the truth. It was about surviving it long enough to act. The call lasted 7 minutes. No raised voices, no emotion, no reassurance, just facts, timestamps, and the careful language of people who understood exactly what could be lost if anything was mishandled. When I ended the call, the room felt different. Not safer, clearer. I sat at the desk with my laptop open, documents arranged neatly beside me, my phone placed face down within reach. Outside the window, the city glimmered like it always had, indifferent to personal collapse, loyal only to momentum. Evan believed momentum was on his side. That belief was about to fail him. I didn't leave the room the next morning. That was deliberate. When people expected movement and received stillness instead, they began to panic. At 8:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Evan, we need to talk." I didn't respond. At 8:26 a.m., "Evan, this is getting out of hand." Still nothing. At 8:39 a.m., "Evan, you're making a mistake." I finally replied, "I've already corrected one." 3 dots appeared immediately, then vanished. He was recalculating. At breakfast, I didn't arrive. That absence mattered more than presence ever had. Lauren noticed first. "Where's Marion?" she asked too casually. Evan didn't look up. "She's busy." Marcus frowned. "With what?" Evan's jaw tightened. "She's being difficult." Diane said nothing, but she didn't eat. At 9:02 a.m., the hotel front desk called my room. "Ms. Caldwell," the clerk said politely, "there's been a request to amend your reservation." "Yes," I replied. "There will be." A pause. "And just to confirm," he continued carefully, "you are still the primary account holder?" "Yes," I said. "Exclusively." The silence on the other end told me everything. "Understood," he said finally. I dressed slowly, not elegantly, intentionally. I chose the same controlled simplicity as before, nothing new, nothing theatrical. Change announced itself best when it wasn't dressed up. When I stepped into the hallway, I didn't hurry. People who hurried looked guilty. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual, not because of time, because of anticipation. The lobby was quieter than it had been all week. Lauren stood near the windows, phone in hand, posture tight. Marcus hovered near the bar, pretending not to watch the elevators. Diane sat stiffly on a couch, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were pale. Evan stood near the desk, waiting. He turned when he saw me. "There you are," he said, forcing calm. "We need to sort this out." I stopped a few feet away. "Sort what?" I asked. "This," he said, gesturing vaguely. "Whatever you think you're doing." I tilted my head. "You mean preventing unauthorized financial action?" Lauren's breath caught audibly. Marcus straightened. Diane closed her eyes. Evan's face tightened. "Don't do this here." "Why not?" I asked. "This is where you started it." His voice dropped. "You're embarrassing yourself." I smiled faintly. "I'm not embarrassed." He glanced around the lobby. Staff, guests, witnesses. "Let's talk privately," he said. "No," I replied. That single word shifted the balance. Lauren whispered, "Evan?" He ignored her. "You don't know what you've triggered," he said. "I know exactly what I froze," I replied. He stared at me now, not as a husband, not even as an adversary, but as someone realizing the system he trusted no longer responded to him. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. I met his gaze. "I documented," I said. "I contested. I notified." His throat worked as he swallowed. "You went to a lawyer," he said. I nodded. "And a bank, and an auditor." Marcus muttered, "Jesus." Lauren took a step back. Diane finally spoke. "It's over, Evan." He rounded on her. "Stay out of this." She didn't flinch. "You underestimated her," Diane said. "We all did." That landed harder than anything I could have said. The clerk approached cautiously. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, "there's an issue with your room access." Evan turned slowly. "What issue?" "Your key has been deactivated." The lobby went still. Lauren stared. "What?" "That's impossible," Evan snapped. The clerk remained calm. "The primary account holder requested a change." Evan turned back to me. "You locked me out?" "I restructured access," I replied evenly. He laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "You can't do that." "I already did," I said. The clerk continued, "Your belongings are being packed and will be available at the service desk." Lauren's voice shook. "You're kicking him out?" I answered her directly. "I'm checking out." Evan's composure broke. "You can't just erase me," he said, louder now. I stepped closer. "I didn't erase you," I said quietly. "I stopped carrying you." The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was absolute. Evan looked around the lobby one last time, at Lauren, at Marcus, at Diane. No one stepped forward. No one defended him. Power, I realized, didn't disappear loudly. It relocated, and it had relocated to me. Evan stood very still. That was the first sign he'd lost control. People who controlled rooms through confidence tended to move constantly, adjusting, redirecting, filling silence with motion. Stillness meant calculation had stalled. It meant the next move was no longer obvious. Lauren was the one who broke first. "This is insane," she said, her voice pitched just high enough to attract attention from nearby guests. "You can't just do this in public." I turned to her. "Public didn't seem to bother you when you assumed I wasn't listening." Her mouth opened, closed. Marcus shifted his weight. "Evan, man, what did you do?" Evan didn't answer him. He was still looking at me. "You think you've won?" he said quietly. "But you've only delayed things." "That's the difference between us," I replied. "You think time belongs to you." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't know how this ends." I met his gaze without flinching. "Neither did you." That was when he changed tactics. "You're overreacting," he said louder now. "This was a misunderstanding. We were just having conversations." "In German," I said. The word cut cleanly through the lobby. Lauren froze. Marcus frowned. "What?" Evan's face tightened. Don't what?" I asked. "Translate?" I turned slightly, angling my voice just enough to carry. "You told them I was predictable," I said calmly. "You said I preferred peace over conflict. You said that made this easier." Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus stared at Evan. "You said what?" Evan snapped. "That's not what?" "You said," I continued, "that the hotel was perfect because it kept things quiet. You said paperwork moved faster when people were relaxed." The clerk at the desk stopped pretending not to listen. Diane's eyes closed. Lauren whispered, "Evan." He rounded on her. "Stay quiet." "No," I said softly. "You don't get to manage voices anymore." The lobby had gone unnaturally still. Guests nearby were openly watching now. Staff hovered at a careful distance, alert but not intervening. This wasn't a fight, it was a reckoning. "You planned to move assets without my consent," I said. "You assumed compliance based on history. Those were your words." Evan laughed sharply. "You're twisting things." "I have the recordings," I said, "and the drafts. And the timestamps." Marcus stepped back as if the floor had shifted. "You recorded him?" "I documented him," I replied. "There's a difference." Evan's voice dropped, urgent now. "This doesn't need to happen." "It already has," I said. Lauren's composure finally cracked. "You told me this was handled," she said to Evan. "You said she wouldn't fight." He didn't look at her. He couldn't. "Handled," I repeated. "That's what you called me." Lauren looked at me then, not with arrogance, not with rivalry, but with fear. "You never said you understood German," she whispered. I met her eyes. "You never asked." The hotel manager appeared at the edge of the lobby, posture cautious. "Is there a problem here?" he asked politely. Evan seized the opportunity. "Yes. My wife is causing a disturbance." I didn't react. The manager looked at me. "Ma'am?" "I'm checking out," I said evenly, "and revoking access tied to my account." The manager nodded. "Of course." Evan turned to him sharply. "You can't just—" "She can," the manager replied calmly. "She's the account holder." That was when Evan's voice rose. "This is absurd," he said. "This is a private matter." I stepped closer, keeping my voice low. "You made it administrative," I said. "You don't get to call it private now." His eyes flicked around the lobby, calculating exits, assessing witnesses. "You're trying to destroy me," he said. I shook my head. "You tried to erase me. I just stopped you." The distinction mattered. Lauren looked around, suddenly aware of the attention. "We should leave." Marcus nodded quickly. "Yeah, we should all just—" "No," Evan said. The word came out sharp, commanding, and it did nothing. Marcus hesitated, then stepped back anyway. "I'm not staying for this," he muttered. Lauren hesitated too, torn between Evan and self-preservation. In the end, she followed Marcus. They didn't look back. Diane remained. She stood slowly and walked to my side. "I'm done," she said quietly. Evan stared at her. "You're choosing her?" Diane shook her head. "I'm choosing the truth." That hurt him more than anger ever could have. The clerk returned with a small trolley holding neatly packed boxes. "Mr. Caldwell's belongings," he said gently. Evan looked at the boxes as if they were an insult. "You planned this," he said to me. "I prepared," I replied. "There's a difference." He stepped closer again, lowering his voice until it was meant only for me. "You think this ends me?" he said. "I'll recover. You'll be the one alone." I held his gaze. "I was alone long before today," I said. "I just stopped pretending otherwise." His face twisted, not with rage but with the realization that nothing he said could touch me now. That was the moment he truly lost. Security approached, not aggressively, but decisively. "Sir," one of them said, "we'll escort you to collect your items." Evan straightened his jacket. He looked at me one last time. "This isn't over," he said. I nodded. "You're right." Then I added quietly, "But it's no longer yours." They escorted him away without another word. The lobby exhaled. People began moving again. Conversations resumed. The spell broke. But something fundamental had shifted. I signed the checkout paperwork with a steady hand. The manager offered apologies, upgrades, discretion. I declined all of it. As I turned to leave, Diane touched my arm. "I'm sorry," she said, "for all of it." I looked at her. "I know." She hesitated. "What happens now?" I considered the question. "Now," I said, "everything that was delayed becomes unavoidable." She nodded slowly, as if she understood exactly what that meant. The hotel doors closed behind me without ceremony. No applause, no stares, no dramatic pause where someone shouted my name, just the soft, hydraulic hush of glass sealing itself, as if the building had already decided I was finished with it. Outside, the city moved the way cities always did. Cars easing into traffic, people stepping around one another with practiced indifference, coffee cups raised, phones lifted, lives continuing uninterrupted by the small implosions of strangers. I stood on the pavement for a moment longer than necessary, not because I didn't know where to go, because for the first time in years, there was nowhere I was required to be. The apartment I moved into a week later was smaller, not temporary, not transitional, intentional. There was light in the mornings that arrived without permission, sliding across bare floors, touching walls that hadn't yet learned my habits. I left boxes unpacked longer than I should have, not out of indecision, but because I wanted to feel the space before claiming it. I wanted to know what belonged. Silence felt different here, not watchful, not heavy, just quiet. The kind that didn't ask anything of me. The legal process unfolded the way legal processes do when evidence is precise. There were no shouting matches, no dramatic depositions, no long speeches about betrayal, just documents, timelines, confirmations. The voicemails did most of the work. So did the drafts Evan never thought I'd see. The phrase, assumption of spousal non-objection, appeared more than once in the paperwork. Each time I read it, something cold and distant settled further into place. He hadn't just underestimated me. He had built his future on my silence. That future collapsed quietly. Evan tried once, only once. He sent an email, not angry, not apologetic, strategic. He wrote about misunderstandings, about intentions, about how things escalated unnecessarily. He suggested mediation, privacy, a clean resolution. I read it carefully. Then I closed it. I didn't reply. Silence, I had learned, was no longer something done to me. It was something I chose. Lauren disappeared quickly. She blocked me on everything before I ever thought to look. Mutual acquaintances mentioned her name less and less, the way people did when a story no longer benefited from repetition. Marcus reached out once, a vague message that said, "I didn't know it was like that." I didn't answer him either. Not everyone deserved closure. Some people only deserve distance. Diane came by one evening without warning. She stood in my doorway holding a bottle of wine she didn't open. "I won't stay long," she said. "You don't have to stay at all," I replied. She nodded and stepped inside anyway. She looked smaller here, not diminished, unarmored. "I didn't think you'd survive it," she said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. "Which part?" She gave a short, humorless smile. "The part where everyone expected you to fold." I poured water instead of wine and handed her a glass. "I folded for years," I said. "I just didn't break." She studied the room, the light, the lack of ornament. "You're different," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm visible." She stayed another 10 minutes. Then she left. We didn't hug. We didn't promise to keep in touch. Some relationships didn't end loudly. They simply reached their limit. Months later, I passed the hotel again. Different season, different light. The same revolving doors turned endlessly, drawing people in, releasing them back out again with equal indifference. I stopped across the street and watched for a moment. A couple exited laughing. A man adjusted his coat. A woman checked her reflection in the glass. They looked like people at the beginning of things. I wondered how many of them believed safety came from being included. I wondered how many thought silence meant peace. I didn't feel bitterness. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something steadier, something quieter, understanding. That night, the night they thought I was trapped, I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't accused. I hadn't begged. I had listened. And listening had given me the one thing they never saw coming. Choice, not the loud kind. Not the dramatic kind, the kind that happens when someone finally understands the structure they're standing inside and decides to step out before it collapses. I didn't destroy them. I didn't need to. I simply stopped holding everything up. And when I did, the truth revealed itself without my help. The apartment settled around me as the weeks passed. I unpacked slowly. I slept deeply. I learned the sound of my own footsteps again. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the moment Evan's face changed, when he realized I had understood every word, not because it haunted me, because it reminded me, power doesn't announce itself. It waits, and when it moves, it does so quietly enough that most people don't realize what's happened until it's already over. They thought I was trapped. But what they never understood was this. I had already been leaving, long before they noticed I was gone.
Thank you for watching. Your trust, your time, and your support truly mean everything. If this video brought you value, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel reach those who need it most. Stay focused, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next video.